One of the most common arguments against the Mandela effect from folks sticking to their confabulation guns is that the brain, quote unquote, doesn't work like that. This phrase is often uttered with little to no follow-up reference or supporting evidence. The argument mainly only holds water due to the fact that modern science knows so little of how the brain actually works. In this video, we're going to examine some of the physiological and psychological aspects of memory formation and retention. I'm going to use as an example what has become arguably the cornerstone example of the Mandela effect, the Berenstain Bears. So let's get started. For objectivity and simplicity's sake, we're going to use the word bear for this example. When your eyes read the word bear, the sensory input travels along a series of nerves called visual pathways to a part of the brain called the occipital lobe, which is responsible for visual interpretation. The occipital lobe will actually create a picture of the word for automatic reference to meaning, connotation, and pronunciation for the next time it's used by the other various parts of the brain. The lobes of your encephalon, or brain, are all located on the part known as the cortex. The cortex is essentially the quote-unquote bark of your brain, which is made up of layers of neurons and is responsible for all of your subjective experience. The word bear will be sent along synaptic connections between neurons and ultimately stored as an explicit long-term memory of the semantic variety. The storage of semantic information occurs across much of the surface of the cortex. It's during sleep that the brain organizes and consolidates all of the memories that it's collected during any given day. When the brain needs to retrieve the word bear again, the brain recalls the word from the exact same series of synaptic connections to which that word has been consolidated. When information is repeatedly accessed through the same synapses, the neurons move closer together, tightening and solidifying the connection. In other words, the more one repeatedly experiences the same thing, the more solidified it becomes in one's memory. Our brains physically change their structure in order to accommodate the knowledge coming into it. This phenomenon is known as brain plasticity. So, let's briefly play devil's advocate and examine a few of the reasons why we forget as delivered by CrashCourse.
All constantly retrieving memories throughout the day. You're remembering where you parked your car, or if you fed the cat, or called your mom because it's her birthday. Our explicit memories, the chronicles of our personal experiences and general knowledge, often require conscious, effortful work. It takes a lot of work to retrieve memories from long-term storage, and the truth is, a lot can go wrong along the way. In order to understand all of the many fascinating ways you forget things, we need to talk more about how we remember. Our memories are not like books in the library of your mind. You don't just pluck a neatly packaged memory right off the shelf about where you left your phone or the hair color of a fruit thief. Instead, your memories are more like the spider webs in the dank catacombs of your mind, a series of interconnected associations that link all sorts of diverse things as bits of information get stuck to other bits of information. The more retrieval cues you inadvertently or intentionally build along the way, the better you can backtrack and find the memory you're looking for. This way of activating associations non-consciously is called priming, sometimes called memoryless memory. It's how invisible memories that you didn't know you had can awaken old associations. Priming is often how you jog your memory. This kind of recall is sometimes referred to as context-dependent memory. Say you're reading in bed and you want to underline a quote but you don't have a pen. Well, you get up and you go to the other room to find your special light-up Hello Kitty pen, but you get distracted and suddenly you find yourself in the kitchen. You're like, why mind? Why am I in the kitchen? What is here? Why am... There was a... and I don't know, but I'm here now, and It's only when you retrace your steps and return to bed to the initial context where you read that quote and encoded that first thought of wanting that pen that the memory comes back. And then you're like, oh, I need to go get the pen. If some memories are context-dependent, others are state-dependent, and also mood-congruent. This just means that our states and our emotions can also serve as retrieval cues. Another funny memory retrieval quirk speaks not to our location or emotions, but to the order in which we receive new information. So, say you make a grocery list in the morning, but a few hours later, you're at the store, you realize you left it at home. You'd be more likely to recall the first items on the list, bananas and bread, and the last items, pickles and cheese, than anything in the middle. This is known as the serial position effect. This might be because the early words benefited from what's known as the primacy effect and made it into your long-term memory because they were rehearsed more. Meanwhile, the last words lingered in the working memory through the recency effect. But those poor middle words, they didn't benefit from either effect and therefore escaped your brain, which is why you now have no toilet paper, dog food, toothpaste, or cookies. Who forgets cookies? But even with all these tricks and associations, things still go wrong. Memory can fail or become distorted, and of course we forget things. Forgetfulness can be as minor as those frustrating moments where you're like, it's on the tip of my tongue, it's the guy. The guy's got a hair and a face and like shoulders. Or as major as Clive Waring, whose neurological damage made it impossible for him to recall the past or create new memories. Of course, we all forget things, and typically we do it in one of three different ways. We fail to encode it, we fail to retrieve it, or we experience what psychologists call storage decay. Sometimes forgetting something just means it never really got through your encoding process in the first place. I mean, think of all the stuff that's going on around you at any given moment. We only actually notice a fraction of what we sense, and we can only consciously hold so many bits of information in our minds at any given time, so what we fail to notice, we tend to not encode and thus don't remember. Again, even memories that have been encoded are still vulnerable to storage decay or natural forgetting over time. Interestingly, even though we can forget things pretty quickly, the amount of data that we forget can actually level off after a while. A lot of times forgetting doesn't mean our memory just faded to black, it means we can't call it up on demand because of retrieval failure. We all know the common tip of the tongue phenomenon where you feel like you know the name of that weird-looking, hard-backed animal that rolls up into a ball. It's kind of cute and weird, and I think they get leprosy or something, but what is it? That's where retrieval cues can come in handy. If I say to you, it starts with the letter A, suddenly, armadillo! Sometimes these retrieval problems stem from interference from other memories getting in the way, essentially cluttering the brain. Sometimes old stuff that you've learned keeps you from recalling new stuff, like if you change one of your passwords but keep recalling an old one every time you want to log in. That's called proactive or forward-acting interference. The flip side of that is retroactive or backward-acting interference, which happens when new learning gets in the way of recalling old information. Like if you start studying Spanish, it may interfere with the French that you've already learned.
It is common knowledge that memory is a potentially fragile thing. There's the classic case of the witness misidentifying the perpetrator. However, while the witness may finger the wrong guy, what they will never forget is experiencing the event itself. Similarly, in the case of the Berenstain Bears, the discrepancy lies within the main title of the book. This cannot be likened to forgetting an item in the middle of a grocery list. We are born with the most neurons that we will ever have. It's during early life that most of us were exposed to these books. The books are first read to us, then we go on to read them ourselves, solidifying the synaptic connections for these words very early on. Many people continue to be avid readers throughout life, some continuing to read the Berenstain books even after the habit has become an arguably unhealthy one. Some of us still maintain those synaptic connections through reading the books to our younger family members, siblings, cousins, nieces and nephews, and sons and daughters. Some of these people in particular have even suffered physical effects due to the changes, migraines, dizziness, etc. This could literally be due to the very deeply ingrained synaptic connections being ripped apart and having to be reconstructed within the brain. The funniest thing about the Berenstain argument to me is that no one seems to really know how to pronounce the term anymore, even the non-believers. Stein, Stein, Stain. This is pertinent because olfactory and auditory input imprints on the human brain more absolutely than visual sensory input. Berenstain just sounds so wrong to so many, including myself. But honestly, I'd rather it had always been Stain because, like all young men, I had an immature sense of humor and I could have had a lot of fun with that. In conclusion, the human brain is vast and mysterious. Modern science still has a long way to go to fully understand it. We're making monumental advances in the study of neuroscience all of the time. While it can have its drawbacks, your memory is there for your survival. It isn't about your past, but your future in that respect. So, the next time you get a Mandela in the medulla, I wouldn't be so quick to dismiss it. If you like the vid, please consider hitting the thumbs up and the subscribe buttons, as it really helps the channel. Thanks for watching.